This person quite literally just left this comment, and I wanted to talk about this. So I'm going to use this comment to do so because I know that there are some white women watching Birdie's video in my response and feeling this way. So let's get into it. I want to start by saying that I kind of agree with part of this, right? White women, if you are not interested in supporting certain political causes, do not support those political causes. In my personal opinion, that is actually where the issue begins, because a lot of people who jump onto these bandwagons and make these Instagram posts saying that they support certain causes haven't truly done the work to actually understand fully what they're supporting and why. Now, I do not know a lot about Birdie. I've only seen that one video. I get the impression that a lot of people don't like this creator for X reason or another. Maybe there's a valid reason, right? But when I watched that video, the thing that stood out to me was, while yeah, their language was aggressive, what they were saying was very, very clear, which is why the comment section of that video was so strange to me. And then I saw a series of stitches that were all mocking them, as though what they were talking about is not something that Black women have been speaking about for a very, very long time. It was truly bizarre. But then it occurred to me that there's a lot of people who, in their own personal view and experience, they are doing something, right? They're making a post, they're doing the thing, but they're not actually like engaged in community with people. So the language that Birdie is using is confusing to them, goes over their head, because they're not actually very involved in these conversations. And what frustrates me about that is these are the same people who expect for you to be appreciative of them doing the work, when the work really does begin and end with them making an Instagram post. So what can you do? What can you do as a cis white woman to do better? In my personal opinion, doing better requires research, and I'm going to give you 2 book suggestions. This is a really good one. This is a very classic one. The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander goes over a lot of the trappings of current systemic racism and the extent at which it gets. This is another book by Remi Eddo-Lodge, Why I'm No Longer Speaking to White People About Race. And it is a really, really good look into what Black people go through when they're trying to have conversations about white supremacy with white people. This is about the UK, but in America, it applies to a lot of other contexts as well. So the problem is that some people, I think, are seeing posts on social media, and I think for women especially, women are often encouraged and pressured to be nice. And for white women, there is indeed a certain context for that is kind of sort of socially believed. We tend to assume that white women are inherently nice for X reason or another. Well, the X reason is white supremacy. And they see these posts and they have buzzwords like decolonization and such, and you don't understand what that means, but you know that you are pressured to, or you feel pressured to post something, to say something so that you could be seen saying something so that you can be seen as a nice and good person, right? There's a phrase, silence is violence. Lots of people sort of have these sayings that essentially say, if you're not going to say anything, you are part of the problem. And in a lot of ways, I will agree. Here's why. I think it's very important for specifically cis white women in America to understand that when oppression comes specifically for them, it's usually after they've already tried to come for a lot of other groups of people. So for white women, it is kind of important for them to be invested in these conversations about marginalized minorities and people trying to normalize oppression against them, because the reality is a lot of the time they're using us as guinea pigs before they actually get to you. Now, that's one way of looking at it, right? That might even be a very self-serving way of looking at it. But I say all that to say that our oppressions are connected, and we're really seeing that right now. People came after Roe v. Wade in order to encourage more white women to have children. If you look at some of the people behind all of that, if you look at some of the conversations conservatives are having, a lot of that is focused on making white women have children. Now, is it going to apply to everyone? Absolutely. But for a lot of people, their goal was continuing to have a large white population in America by forcing women to have children, right? And this, of course, is in place because there are certain people who are very invested in white dominance in this country, right? That is one of the main tenets of white supremacy and one of the main arguments for why certain things shouldn't happen in a certain way, right? People often say, well, black people are only 14%, or, Asian people are only this percent, so maybe we shouldn't do certain things for them, right? There's a lot of people where, there's a lot of people banking on white supremacy and white dominance, right? And what we're seeing with Roe v. Wade is that a lot of people now are experiencing the very real fear that a lot of us have felt for all of our lives, because before they got to y'all, they came for us, right? And that's kind of part of why sometimes this conversation about voting for Joe Biden is a little frustrating, because a lot of us have been screaming out for a really long time that we need help, and we've lost faith in the system. I'm definitely one of those people. I try not to talk too much about it, but that's a reason why you don't really hear me talking a lot about politicians or what's happening, in politics, because I already have accepted that I currently live in a white supremacist country that does not want me to be here, right? I'm hopeful that things get better. I want to do what I can so that things can get better. But at the end of the day, I'm not as invested in the system as maybe other people are. I don't have as much faith in the system, right? But that's another conversation for another day. Anyway, one of the reasons why I'm going to suggest this book is because it speaks from the perspective of a Black woman who has had a lot of conversations with white people about race. And Black women, we are one of the first, we're on the front lines, right? We are often pressured to have these conversations. And I've had a lot of really unpleasant interactions with white women specifically who are trying to learn, but don't necessarily understand that I don't function in my everyday life all the time as an education tool. Sometimes I just want to go to a bar and have fun, and it's not the time for me to talk to you about race and racism, right? But this is a great book for that, so that you can understand some of the kind of frustrating conversations that Black people have with white people about race, and why so many people are sort of shifting how they're feeling about a lot of these things, because it is a frustrating conversation. And it's especially frustrating to have with white women who are in relationships with white men who are conservative, or have, friends who are conservative, who mainly only have these conversations with you, but don't have those conversations with them. So this brings me back to the ultimate thing. What can white cis women do? White cis women have the ability that I don't have, right? You have, I'm assuming, I could be wrong, probably more likely than not, larger access to other white people who probably don't actually want to speak to me because they're still processing their racism, but they will go and they will vote a certain way. And you have the opportunity to speak to those people and get them to shift their perspectives. I said in my video that we need more rude and disrespectful white women. What do I mean? Is we need more women who are willing to be rude and disrespectful in order to advocate for the causes that they believe in, if they believe in them. I don't think a lot of people understand that when you are a marginalized minority and you have somebody who's spending a lot of time in your face talking about how much of an ally they are, it is actually quite traumatic to reach a point with them where you need their help, you need their support, and they decide not to do it because they would rather be comfortable. Because usually part of being a minority is also being isolated. I know from myself, I spent a lot of my life being one of the only Black people in the space, one of the only trans people in the space, right? And for that reason, it was incredibly hard for me to stomach when people who said that they were my allies sided with people who were oppressing me directly, right? So if you feel like this is true, there's nothing you can do, I want to make it very clear that that is not true. What is actually happening within the context of Birdie's video is they are actually asking white women to do better and to be better. They, it's a criticism, right? And I know that it doesn't sound great, right? I get that, Birdie's very angry and upset in that video, but a lot of times these conversations are had so that you can be better. They're not had so that you fully walk away and no longer do this. But I will reiterate what I said at the top of this video, that I think if you're someone who doesn't actually support these things, everyone would be happier if you simply didn't pretend that you did. So yeah.